The car market is screwed. Buyers can't afford to buy these cars anymore. These cars, trucks, SUVs that we've seen these car manufacturers jack up the prices in the last 3 or 4 years, absolutely to astronomical numbers we've never seen before. And that's the primary reason why a lot of these car manufacturers are in serious distress. We see growing inventory levels, days on the lot, vehicles not selling. I've been seeing car lots just full and overflowing of inventory because now not only have they caught up, but they now can't sell what they've got. They've got new allocations for 25 coming in. A lot of people just can't afford it. The price increase of a lot of these cars and trucks and SUVs have gone absolutely ballistic. But I've got a collection here and I've done some quick checks, really looked at some of the numbers that we see from 2024 back to 2014, and we talk about some of the comparisons. Let's look at the differences in 10 short years and why we believe people obviously can't afford a lot of these new vehicles. A lot of the averages have gone up, 25, 30, 40% for higher trim levels, even as much as 50% if you're looking at some of the premium trim levels. But some of these car brands here, and I've got some numbers for you. I look at back in 2014, for example, we all know that Ram and Stellantis and Jeep and Chrysler, and they've all jacked their prices to astronomical levels. Or have they? See, this is what a lot of people are actually looking for. They're looking for a cost-effective, affordable baseline, base trim vehicle. And while a lot of people want the sunroof and the vibrating seats, not everybody does. Some people want that affordable vehicle. Look, Ram, they clearly just got rid of their Classic. And that's unfortunate because that's one of their price point vehicles, one in which that some people just needed a basic vehicle to get to work and do a little bit of hauling duty. But they've canceled that. Effectively this fall you won't be able to buy yourself an entry-level base trim. But let's look at the starting MSRP from this year to what we're talking about 10 years ago and see how much we've seen increases. I look right now, 2025 Ram 1500 says they've started the prices around $42,270. But then we scale, well, actually let's look at the top trim. We're at $90,000 now, and we know the tungsten and those types of models are going to be extraordinarily hard to find and extraordinarily expensive. And by the time you put the add-ons and the extras, you're well over $100,000 US dollars. Forget about Canadian funds. You're going to be into the US in excess of 100 grand for a non-diesel vehicle, a light duty 1500 pickup truck. And that's Ram. That's what they've been doing. It's their top trim levels. And I think that's where a lot of people have this little bit of a misconception that you can't find an affordable vehicle. Well, they've all gone up ridiculous amounts. Inflationary factors do come in, and of course people do get raises, but yes, the price increases of a lot of these vehicles have far exceeded the raises that people get. Now, if you're lucky, you get 2 or 3% raise year over year on your salary, your job, your career. But what we're seeing is in 2014 to 2025, now the Ram, so in about 10 years, 11 years, we've seen the base price for a sport four-wheel drive regular cab started around $38,125. So 38 grand, and now the base price is around $42,000. Now you're saying, okay, well, wait a minute, that's only $4,000 or $5,000 in the course of 10 years. That's actually not bad, right? But a lot of that comes, these numbers aren't totally apples to apples. Let's talk about a number that makes a little bit more sense. And back in 2014, let's go up to something that is a sport two-wheel drive quad cab. So it's not, all decked out, but it does have the full cabs on it. And that was about $38,500. But then again, we're at a place where today they're saying the base price is 42 grand. So it's only that's only $4,000 difference. So you're saying, well, where did all that price increase go? And why is everybody screaming all this chaos and crap and corruption? Well, because they're outfitting them differently. Let's put it this way. And what you're finding is back in 2014, you could get a very basic trim vehicle. You could get a simple vehicle, but they still had some core amenities. Today, they're cutting costs, and we know that Ram has struggled selling some vehicles. But we're going up to $42,000, so $4,000 increase over 10 years. That doesn't seem like that big of an increase. But it's the top trims. And see, that's the thing, that they'll advertise these base trims, but you can't get them, barely. Or you have to order them, special order, and you have to wait an extraordinary amount of time. But see, this is the game that a lot of these dealers are playing now. is all the add-ons and the extras and the admin fees, and they're charging you for some of the extras, and by the time you're walking out that door nowadays, that $42,000 truck is going to be base model. It might be a regular cab, two-wheel drive, but they're adding in all these extras, so that truck, you're out the door $50,000. And see, that's where they're starting to make up some of their costs. But also what they're doing is they're advertising these low entry-level costs, but you can't get those trucks. And so that's what they're doing, is what they've traditionally been doing during this last 5-10 years is only provide the cars. They're only sending the higher dollar, higher margin vehicles to the car lots to sell. So they'll have these entry-level vehicles, they'll have these base trim levels, but good luck in getting them. And that's the catch, that's the caveat. So you want to go to the next step, all of a sudden you're into the $50,000, $55,000 plus for something still very low trim level, lots of plastic parts, cloth seats, small infotainment, and that's good. That's what people want, but you still got to compare apples to apples. So realistically, that $4,000 is very unlikely. Anyway, moving on. Let's not just talk about trucks. How about the Toyota Highlander? And we know Toyota hasn't, received a lot of press for some high prices, but I look at a 2014 Highlander. Back then, in 2014, so 10 years ago, you can get an LE V6 two-wheel drive. Not that you'd buy a Highlander in two-wheel drive, but hey, they throw it out there. You could get it for $30,000, 500 and change. So 30 grand got you a base Highlander with a V6. Nowadays, there is no V6 available anymore, so you're buying these little 4-cylinder engines, sometimes with hybrids, but the base engines now are turbo 4s, so you're actually getting less vehicle in a lot of opinions. But the new 2024 pricing starts around $41,000. So now you've gone up 25%. So you see where Ram, they sort of hide their numbers by not making those base trims available, whereas Toyota makes them available, but they're paying 25% more in 10 years. 25% more. I bet your wages haven't kept up with that. But that's what's going on. And Toyota, they've been incrementally jacking up prices, and so your wages likely haven't followed suit. On top of that, if you want to get the platinum, the high-end platinum version of the Highlander, you're up to almost $52,000. So we're seeing some pretty big jumps. So that 25% increase on base trim becomes closer to 35%, almost 40% increase on the top level trim for the Highlander. You see how that works? So they're making it less desirable. They're packaging these vehicles in such a way that there's some even core features that you need. Everybody needs four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive in an SUV. So people then trim up and to get the four-wheel drive version of the outgoing model, it's $34,000. You see, so the LE Plus four-wheel drive, because everything else up to that is pretty much, low spec or missing some of the core fundamentals. You need to spend about 34 grand to get into a four-wheel drive Highlander back in 14. But it's still a relatively good bargain when you compare $52,000 to the Highlanders of today. How about other vehicles like the F-150? They've been going up like crazy too, right? STX four-wheel drive super cab, $34,000. That's a pretty good trim level. I mean, STX is base, but it does give you the four-wheel drive, does give you the super cab, so, a little bit more cab there. It's not the full-on quad, but that was $34,000 back in 2014. Now to get a base trim F-150, remember, that was an STX 4x4. So if we look at the base trim of the 2014 F-150, it was actually $34,000. Compare that to the new 2024 F-150 base pricing, you're at $44,000. So you've gone up 10 grand in 10 years on the base trims. Now good luck in getting that base trim. You can't even find like base XLs, or this is an FX2 from back in 10 years ago. But hard to find. And if you can, well, that's $10,000. That's a 25% increase. But again, nobody goes for the base trim because it's regular cab, two-wheel drive. It's so base, nobody really wants that. Very seldom fits the bill. Now, I know not everybody wants sunroofs and all those extra amenities, but what's starting to paint the picture is these manufacturers are providing these, but they're providing vehicles that A, are hard to get, B, are trimmed to a point where you need to get some of those base amenities, and in the trim levels you can't get that. I mean, you can't even get an AM radio hardly, and you'll get rubber floors and crank windows, regular cab two-wheel drive with a short or even a long box, so they look ugly. They don't have the capacity, the towing capacity. They don't have any amenities, and they're basically a fleet vehicle. But you're at 25% increase from 10 years ago to today. And so that's 25%. But again, as you start scaling up the range, what you're starting to find is in the F-150s, as you start to go top trim from 10 years ago to top trim today, you've seen about a 45-50% increase in MSRP pricing. So you can see what they're doing. They're providing these sandbagging these numbers to get people in the door. But when you start fishing and you start pricing out the numbers and you start looking at the specs and the options, nobody ever goes for those base trims because they're really almost unlivable unless you're just throwing them into a fleet for a business, which is fine. It works for that, that scenario, but seldom do people buy those. And then the dealers are great at manipulating, getting you in at the in-house financing, getting the paint protection film, getting the rim protection, getting all those extra add-ons, administrative fee, and all these other fees that they start, excise taxes and all this AC tax and tire tax and levies this and levies that. Next thing you know, a $40,000 vehicle is $50,000 out the door. So this is what these dealers are good at, is getting the extras on the tags and providing value in upscaling, scaling up to the next trim level, because these base trims don't mean much. Nobody ever buys the base trims because they're almost unlivable. Okay, what about the Wrangler? One of the worst culprits in the industry. I'm looking at a 2024 Wrangler from 10 years ago. Base MSRP was, what is that? $26,000, 26 grand. Back in 2014, got you a base. Likely going to be cloth roof. It's going to be manual gearbox, 4-cylinder, naturally aspirated. It wasn't a great vehicle. Today, you're at about $32,000 for the base, and you'll get a turbo 4-cylinder engine with that. So that's not a great. I mean, we're talking about 26. We're talking about a $5,000-$6,000 increase, which is only about a 20%, in 10 years. And you think, oh, wow, that's actually not that bad. But again, it kind of is, because again, those base trim vehicles are hard to come by. They might put one on there. It'll be an awkward color that you don't want to buy. And a lot of dealers want to have those cheap entry-level vehicles to sell. But the problem is the OEMs aren't providing those. They're not sending those to the dealer. They're saying, here's some ugly ones that are high trim levels. You got to sell those. If you sell those, we'll kind of give you some other different variable specs. But a lot of people are just finding themselves not able to find these base trims. And so at a 20% increase in 10 years, while that doesn't seem crazy, I mean, wages, I would say a lot of wages, 2-3% increased salary increases year over year. It probably puts you in the space of natural inflation or adjusted for inflationary rates. The problem is, as soon as you start moving up the trim levels, here we go again, the same old song and dance. So the message here, everybody, is that the best thing you can do is, if you want to get yourself an affordable vehicle, don't go up the trim levels. Keep it simple. If maybe you want those fancy wheels, hey, you know what? You're better off buying a set of aftermarket wheels after the fact, and maybe use these factory steel rims as winter tires, and go put some nice wheels on for the summer. You can go aftermarket to a tire shop. They'll outfit you. Get some cheap rims on there. You can even get some aftermarket hardtops, say for the Jeeps, some of these other trucks. Okay, you can't change a regular cab to a quad cab. But just think long and hard. What options do you really need? Do you really need the sunroof? Do you really need leather interior? I've never had leather in a truck before, and I've been fine. As a matter of fact, if you don't have leather, then you probably don't need heated seats. So it's kind of, it's almost the chicken or the egg. You start adding features, and then you need more features. And then the next thing you know, the snowball effect, and you end up in a trim level that's far, far beyond what you need and far beyond affordable. Because let's face it, a lot of people are snookered. The cost of living crisis, a lot of people are underwater now in negative equity, and they're overdrawn 84 months on some of these loan terms. Have you heard of this going on? all too often, unfortunately. In my world, I'm hearing of a lot of people getting into these 84 months, and they're pretty much immediately and almost forever underwater on their loan payments, and they'll never get out of it. And this is the problem. A lot of people want more. They get the big eyes, they want the shiny new toys, and they're not willing to go with the base. But if you look at every one of these examples, what we're seeing is anywhere from about a 20 to 25% increase in 10 years, which is almost to be expected, if we're being honest. Now, they've gone up dramatically. The trick is holding them accountable. And if you want that cheap vehicle, go shopping and make sure you're looking for that trim vehicle and stick to your guns. Don't start big eyes and looking for that next trim level. Go with just the bare fundamentals. You need a work truck. You need a truck to tow the trailer, to go camping on the weekend. You need a truck just to get from A to B. It's maybe a small SUV from A to B, maybe a fun little vehicle. That's the trick. They get you in the door, give you the fancy grille, the big rims, the 23-inch wheels, and then you get all excited. But if you can keep it real, keep emotions out of the game, and think with this rather than this, you're likely going to find yourself being able to find yourself a somewhat affordable vehicle today. And now with incentives coming out, there could actually be a bit of an opportunity here to get yourself some deals. So again, keep it simple. Keep the fancy options out of the game. And if you look at here, 20-25% in 10 years, that's pretty much inflationary increases, maybe slightly above. But keep it real and skip those top trim levels unless you really know that you're going to dig deep into your wallet and you're going to spend all those hard-earned dollars. And the last thing I'd say is, again, don't get into these 84 months. Keep it 48 months. Keep it 60 months max, 48 months ideally, with a significant down payment, and keep your payments under 20-25% of your monthly gross salary so you have enough income left over to pay for these rising costs of insurance, rising cost of food, housing. You want to be able to ensure that you can live and that you're not car poor at the end of the day. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you found any extraordinarily good deals? Please do drop a line, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. See you real soon. Bye-bye.